All right, founders. In this video, I am going to review, respond, react, one of those videos, to the most popular TED Talk about startups. I am now freshly clean shaven after recording some YouTube videos with my son. I realized that I totally look like a bum. So here we are. I went and looked up the most popular TED Talk, not a TEDx talk even, TED Talk about startups. I found this bad boy here, The Single Biggest Reason Why Startups Succeed by Bill Gross. I watched this a long time ago. It is 7 years old, June 1st, 2015. But I thought, hey, I wonder how it stood up. Does it stand up against the test of time? We're going to watch it, and I'm going to share my views and thoughts on it, especially as the lead advisor for startups.com, working with startups every single day. And what I might say to this, or would I give the same advice? Here we go. Let's take a look.
I'm really excited to share with you some findings that really surprised me about what makes companies succeed the most. What factors actually matter the most for.
Okay, so let's talk about the fact that right away, isn't really a big surprise. What was surprising in 2015 and what's surprising now are two completely different things. There's always surprises, but I think he's sort of juicing up the audience in terms of that's what TED Talk does, right? You're supposed to present a novel insight. And let's talk about what factors matter most for company success. All right. Thankfully, this video is only 6 minutes and 40 seconds. I really appreciate Bill Gross for making such a short and succinct video. Let's continue.
Startup success. I believe that the startup organization is one of the greatest forms to make the world a better place.
I completely agree. What I love about startups as a difference to small businesses or other types of businesses. While I appreciate businesses and entrepreneurs, what happens is startups go out and solve unique and novel problems, and they create category defining companies and products and services, whereas small businesses are important for employing people. A lot of innovation and different things come out of startups, and then they just drive the economy like a news cycle. As far as the stock market is concerned, investors, startups make the world go round. Some people may disagree with me, but I love startups for this very reason. And I love founders for this very reason.
If you take a group of people with the right equity incentives and organize them in a startup, you can unlock human potential in a way never before possible. You get them to achieve unbelievable things. But if the startup organization is so great, why do so many fail? That's what I wanted to find out.
Okay, so I'm just going to say right now, startups fail. They're incredibly risky because for a true startup, you're trying to do something that's never been done before with a technology that's never been seen before in an industry where people don't even know, they might not even know, or they might even be resisting your startup, and therefore incredibly risky. You're taking complete moonshots, but the asymmetric upside is just incredible when it comes to startups.
I wanted to find out what actually matters most for startup success. And I wanted to try to be systematic about it, avoid some of my instincts and maybe misperceptions I have from so many companies I've seen over the years. I wanted to know this because I've been starting businesses since I was 12 years old, when I sold candy at the bus stop in junior high school, to high school when I made solar energy devices, to college when I made loudspeakers, and when I graduated from college, started software companies. And 20 years ago, I started Idealab, and in the last 20 years, we started more than 100 companies.
Let's take a look at these 100 companies. Let's see. All right. We have a PetSmart by Our Place, shopping.com. Some of these companies I think are still in play today. Some of these companies not doing so well. They have completely folded. If I do recall correctly, I don't recognize a lot of them though. And so I don't know. Does that say something about Idea Lab? No, I don't think so. Prolific, I would say absolutely prolific in terms of starting companies. So I'm not too sure. Idea Lab, I should have looked this up, but is Idea Lab an accelerator? What is Idea Lab? Well, let's just say they've started companies, and here we go. So take a look at these companies there. So I'm sure, point is, I'm sure he's got a lot of data to look at. Great lessons.
Many successes and many big failures. We learned a lot from those failures. So I tried to look across what factors accounted the most for company success and failure. So I looked at these 5. First, the idea. I used to think that the idea was everything. I mean, I named my company Idea Lab, and how much I worship the aha moment when you first come up with the idea.
That's true. Founders today say that Idea Lab is, or the idea is the most important thing. I have an idea for an app. I have an idea for this particular problem. I've got an idea for the solution that fits that problem. I think that that is still common today, where people think, okay, ideas are the best. Ideas are what startups are made of. And that's true, where the idea is the seed.
But then over time, I came to think that maybe the team, the execution, adaptability, that mattered even more than the idea. I never thought I'd be quoting boxer Mike Tyson on the TED stage, but he once said, "Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face."
Okay, I completely agree with this as well. So now his thinking has evolved. An idea is only so great unless you have the team to execute. And the word execution is extremely important. Got this idea, but then how do we make this idea come to life? That's the reason investors do look at founder teams. It's very important that they say, okay, we're not investing in ideas. We're investing in the team that's going to execute the idea, because if that idea doesn't pan out, which so many startups don't pan out in terms of their initial idea, then the team is smart enough to go pivot. So for example, I've seen startups get funded and they start with one product and then they end up with something completely different, and they're very successful. If you look at the show the startup Pied Piper in the show Silicon Valley, which I'm doing a review series about, well, they end up with a completely different product than what they started with, because the team was able to pivot. Even if you look at Airbnb, the initial investors in Airbnb are the ones that gave them their start, Y Combinator. They said themselves, well, we didn't quite understand what Airbnb was all about. Some people just thought it was a bad idea, but we really liked the founders and we believed in them. So the team was extremely important. Okay, Bill, I'm tracking on you, tracking on your advice. Everybody does have a plan till they get punched in the face. I would even venture to say that many founders, because I have an idea, let's just start hacking away. They don't even have a plan, and they go courageously forward and they just get in the ring and start swinging away. Sometimes, most of the time, doesn't quite work out. And that's the reason you have to really be thinking through. It's what Andreessen Horowitz calls the idea maze. Spend time thinking through the plan, or all the contingencies, all the things that could happen in your plan, like a boxing match where you could say they might change tactics, they might do this, they might do that, and planning for all those scenarios. You have to be thinking through the idea at that level.
And I think that's so true about business as well. So much about a team's execution is its ability to adapt to getting punched in the face by the customer. The customer is the true reality. And that's why I came to think that the team maybe was the most important thing. Then I started.
Do customers really punch you in the face? Yeah, they do. Not on purpose, but you go out there and the best feedback that you're going to get ever in startups is after you tell the customer your price. And they're going to act the way they want to act. So many times customers say one thing and they'll do the complete opposite. And that's like a gut punch. That's like body blow, body blow, body blow. And then customers don't buy, you have no revenue. And then it's the uppercut right to the chin, knocks the startup up, knocks the startup out, not up, out. That was just a weird slip. Okay, here we go.
Started looking at the business model. Does the company have a very clear path generating customer revenues? That started rising to the top in my thinking about maybe what mattered most for success. Then I looked at the funding. Sometimes companies received intense amount of funding. Maybe that's the most important thing.
Here, I'm going to continue to agree. So many founders go out there and say, I got this idea, I got the team, I got the business model, and I just need the funding to be successful. If I got the funding, if I get the investor to believe me and I get the check for whatever, 150,000, $2 million, then everything is going to be successful. I just got to get the funding. And that is just, it's dangerous thinking, because a lot of times funding creates the opposite. It actually will hurt the startup more. There are stats out there and studies how much VC, venture capital, hurts a startup, because all these factors come into play that prevent the founders from focusing on executing against the idea, refining the business model, because they're now chasing the funding, or they're under so much pressure because of the specific type of funding and the source of funding. Therefore, funding is not the end all be all. In fact, if you could build a startup without any funding whatsoever, and you make it to the level where you're successful without external funding, your startup is in a much healthier and stronger place. I completely advocate for that bootstrapping, but funding is important after your startup is successful, showing product market fit, and you want to scale it because you got this spectacular exit. You're going to go unicorn, go public, get acquired for, 100, $200 million, all that good stuff.
And then, of course, the timing. Is the idea way too early and the world's not ready for it? Is it early, meaning you're in advance and you have to educate the world? Is it just right, or is it too late and there's already too many competitors? So I tried to look very carefully at these 5 factors across many companies. And I looked across all 100 Idealab companies and 100 non-Idealab companies to try and come up with something scientific about it. So first, on these Idealab companies, the top 5 companies, CitySearch, Cars Direct, GoTo, NetZero, Tickets.com, those all became billion-dollar successes. And the 5 companies on the bottom, Z.com, Insider Pages, MyLife, Desktop Factory, People Inc., we all had high hopes for, but didn't succeed.
Let's take a look. So Cars Direct, familiar. Overture, definitely huge success. NetZero, Tickets.com, yeah, absolutely. The bottom, never heard of those companies, and I guess that's the reason why. So if we look, just scoring the different things in terms of, I'm not too sure how he scored these, but I'm sure there was a consistent way he looked at each one.
So I tried to rank across all of those attributes how I felt those companies scored on each of those dimensions. And then for non-Idealab companies, I looked at wild successes like Airbnb and Instagram and Uber and YouTube and LinkedIn, and some failures, Webvan, Cosmo, Pets.com, Flues, and Friendster.
Definitely heard of Webvan, no, not Cosmo, Pets.com for sure, Fluser, no, Friendster, absolutely. So these are probably the more spectacular failures, like Pets.com. Wow, what a disaster that became. But the top ones, yeah, you can argue that they were very successful.
The bottom companies had intense funding. They even had business models in some cases, but they didn't succeed. I tried to look at what factors actually accounted the most for success and failure across all these companies, and the results really surprised me. The number one thing was timing. Timing accounted for 42% of the difference between success and failure. Team and execution came in second, and the idea, the differentiability of the idea, the uniqueness idea, that actually came in third. Now, this isn't absolutely definitive. It's not to say that the idea isn't important, but it very much surprised me that the idea wasn't the most important thing. Sometimes it mattered more when it was actually timed.
The idea is definitely not the most important thing. Not too sure how he defines idea, truth, outlier. Maybe it's just a completely unique, novel idea. But a lot of times, founders are working on the same idea in the same industry. This just proves my point there. If you look at the bottom, funding is right at the bottom, because again, factors, getting access to money is not the best thing in the world. When founders are going and they're trying to raise, I just say in back of my mind, careful what you wish for. Business models, they change all the time. So many different factors. Now, here's the interesting thing. Timing. Okay, I wouldn't call it timing. I see where he's trying to get to timing. And I'm going to argue right now that the timing, team execution, while the team is going to determine timing of different things, I don't know, just my thoughts bubbling up, right now. And these are things, obviously I've watched this before, but I'm just going giving you my thought process and how I'm processing this information. He has looked at over 200 companies, so I'm going to say this is a pretty good sample size.
The last two, business model and funding, made sense to me, actually. I think business model makes sense to be that low because you can start out without a business model and then add one later if your customers are demanding what you're creating. And funding, I think as well. If you're underfunded at first, but you're gaining traction, especially in today's age, it's very, very easy to get intense funding. So now let me give you some specific examples about each of these. So take a wild success like Airbnb, everybody knows about. Well, that company was famously passed on by many smart investors because people thought, no one's going to rent out a space in their home to a stranger. Well,
I make this joke all the time. You might as well have called it rent your couch to an axemurderer.com. My sense of humor there. I think it's funny. My kids call it a dad joke, but I digress. Let's continue.
of course, people proved that wrong. But one of the reasons it succeeded, aside from a good business model, a good idea, great execution, is the timing. That company came out right during the height of the recession when people really needed extra money. And that maybe helped people overcome their objection to renting out their own home to a stranger. Same thing with Uber. Uber came out, incredible company, incredible business model, great execution too, but the timing was so perfect for their need to get drivers into the system. Drivers were looking for extra money. It was very, very important. Some of our early successes, CitySearch came out when people needed web pages. GoTo.com, which we announced actually at TED in 1998, was when companies were looking for cost-effective ways to get traffic. We thought the idea was so great, but actually the timing was probably maybe more important. And then some of our failures. We started a company called Z.com. It was an online entertainment company. We were so excited about it. We raised enough money. We had a great business model. We'd even signed incredibly great Hollywood talent to join the company. But broadband penetration was too low in 1999, 2000. It was too hard to watch video content online. You had to put codecs in your browser and do all this stuff. And the company eventually went out of business in 2003. Just 2 years later, when the codec problem was solved by Adobe Flash, and when broadband penetration crossed 50% in America, YouTube was perfectly timed. Great idea, but unbelievable timing. And in fact, YouTube didn't even have a business model when it first started. It wasn't even it was certain that that would work out. But that was beautifully, beautifully timed. So what I would say in summary is execution definitely matters a lot. The idea matters a lot, but timing might matter even more. And the best way to really assess timing is to really look whether consumers are really ready for what you have to offer them.
All right. So Bill lost me for a moment. I remember thinking this through, but then he wraps it back up. I would say timing is important. Timing represents different factors as far as the context. So economy, et cetera. But timing affects the problems consumers have or clients, your companies, if you're B2B. And then it is important that you follow up with the timing or the problem that everybody has so you can get that almighty traction with a unique and novel solution that other people aren't doing. So it's not necessarily timing to me. It is, are you solving a problem that people actually want to have solved, and are things aligning up where they're willing to change their behavior and adopt something? So for example, if you are saying, okay, I am going to deliver all this stuff on mobile phones, and people don't have enough mobile phones, way back in the day when mobile phones weren't strong enough to be basically mini computers and have all the processing power in the world, well, then your timing's off. Then they can't change their behaviors. They're not ready. They may want the problem solved, but they're not ready for it. So I think timing, let me summarize this. You find a problem people want to have solved. Not, I have a solution, I'm going to find a problem to shoehorn it into. I think this is the way it is. What are customers out there? What does the market say in terms of the problem they want to have solved? And have you created a unique solution? And is the unique solution timed properly, and all the factors fit into place where people can change their behaviors, and you're right ahead of the game in terms of, especially like in terms of the competitors aren't already thinking. So probably your solution is a little ahead of its time, and competitors are like, we would never do that. That's a stupid idea. And then you've got them, right? We were talking about Netflix saying we're going to deliver videos, and was their business model. We're going to deliver DVDs to your door, let you return it every time. And then they went online. So that proves that the business model changed. But Blockbuster was sitting there going, that's a dumb idea. We make all our money on late charges. Nobody's going to want things delivered to their door, go to the, post office and deliver in envelopes. And then no one's going to stream online. But Netflix ended up eating Blockbuster's lunch. And so I agree, but I don't agree that timing is the main thing. I think it's a confluence of multiple issues, but does timing put the icing on the cake, or might it be the final determining factor? That does make sense to me. It's not that simple, especially today, Bill. But I'm sure if we talked to Bill today and we had this conversation, he might, think things a little bit different or approach things a little bit differently. But I like the way that he started.
And to be really, really honest about it, not be in denial about any results that you see. Because if you have something you love, you want to push it forward. But you have to be very, very honest about that factor on timing.
Okay, I agree. This is where founders really love their startup. They really love their solution and they try and push it in the marketplace, but the timing is not right, or the context. In fact, I would say context. Instead of timing, I would use, this just came to me now, I would use context. The timing, the political factors, economic factors, trends, consumers, etc., all the technology. Is the context the right time and place with people? Is the context conducive for your startup to succeed? I'm going with context.
As I said earlier, I think startups can change the world and make the world a better place. I hope some of these insights can maybe help you have a slightly higher success ratio and thus make something great come to the world that wouldn't have happened otherwise. Thank you very much. Been a great audience.
All right. I dig it. I like the video. I thought it was great in terms of taking the qualitative and quantitative factors for startups to succeed. I'm picking up what he's putting down, like I said. So it is old. Has it aged completely well? Well, I would say there are other factors that have made startups a lot more sophisticated and complicated. There's a lot more competition out there, et cetera. So probably a lot of factors, but as far as basics are concerned, I think the best takeaway that you should pull from this is funding is the lowest success factor when it comes to your startup. Really do focus. I would say put it in order, okay? Start with the idea and then bring your team together, start testing the idea. And then what you want to do is figure out, all right, what's our business model? How's this going to make money? But then go and be realistic about the context, which includes timing and so many factors. Is the context in which our startup exists and we're launching our problem solution for a problem solution fit, our product for problem solution fit, is the context right for us to eventually reach product market fit? And the thing is, you're not going to know until you start doing your MVPs, until you start, this continual development cycle, and you use lean startup method or whatever methodology you want to use, and you start running these experiments and you try something, you measure, and then you learn from it. And then you keep going around and around and around. That's the only way that you're going to find out. So start off, all these factors are important, but think about the context, which includes the timing. That's what I would say I would take away from this video. Hopefully this has been helpful for you. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think. If there's any other YouTubers or different videos or different sources of information you want to review, this is just my opinion as the lead advisor at startups.com. If you are part of our startups.com online accelerator community on demand, you can ask for office hours. We can discuss this all we want. Hopefully it's been helpful. Like I said, see you in the next video.